All right, folks. Well, you know you're in for a treat when you hear that tune. 'Cause it's time for another week of the Rec Poker Podcast. I'm your host, Jim Reid, Bluffsterini in the home game, and at Rec Poker Jim on the hellscape we call Twitter. And I have the best freaking job in the world talking poker with my friends here on the Strategy Forums edition of the podcast every Monday night while we steal each other's chips in the nightly free play money home game. Now, I have to mention we're brought to you by Running Aces, the official sponsor of the Rec Poker Podcast. They're located just an hour north of the Twin Cities in the beautiful state of Minnesota. You can find out more about them at runaces.com. Because most of what we do here is free. We're a largely volunteer-based organization, so we really depend on support from our sponsors and our premium members who take part in our training material and study opportunities for only $22 a month. Now you can sign up for a free Rec Poker community account. Like I say, a lot of what we do here is free. We've got some great resources, and all it takes to sign up is an email address and a smile, although we do insist on both. But you can get your first month of Rec Poker Premium membership for only $5 if you use the code RecPoker at checkout. And if $5 or $22 feels like a lot, we get that. You can also get a free month of Rec Poker anytime by making a donation of any amount to your local food bank and just sending us the receipt. And we'd love to encourage our listeners to support their local food bank and get more involved with Rec Poker as you do. Now, they get used to host it. You get used to hearing my voice because they let me host the show on Mondays, but I am just one man. I'm a small part of the Rec Poker machine here. It takes a group, a gang, a crew to make all the magic happen around here. We call this group of wizards the RECing Crew. And if you want to learn more about me or the rest of the crew, you go to rec.poker/crew. Or you can just listen up because you're going to meet a couple fantastic Wrecking Crew members here, starting with one of our coaches, Mark Zhang.
I'm Mark Zhang, and once a month, every Thursday, I do at least, uh, office hours where we talk about tournaments and strategies.
I'm Rob Washam. You can find me as Radman50 just about everywhere. And on the first and third Wednesdays of every month, you can join me and a bunch of our premium members as we discuss the latest poker book.
That's right. So we've got just a couple Wrecking Crew members here tonight, but this is going to be a really interesting conversation. So if you're a regular listener, you know over several of the last weeks we've been talking about this King Queen hand from Taylor Moss. That spawned a conversation about playing out of position in with a polarized range. That had a whole conversation a couple weeks ago with Mark and Chris and some excellent insights from some other members about kind of turning these uncomfortable positions into profitable situations. And so we decided we just want. So Mark, if regular listeners don't know, Mark's very accomplished online pro, plays a lot of live tournaments as well. He's a tournament specialist. He's had some phenomenal results. He's also a great coach and conversationalist when it comes to the game of poker. And he just, Mark, you understand the language of poker so well, the different branches of the decision tree, the places that other people aren't familiar with, that they're not comfortable, and you know how to put them in those positions where they're uncomfortable. I just wanted to sort of, you suggested a few hands that we could talk about here on the show that might illustrate this thought process, this way of determining how to apply pressure. I'm not going to put any more words in your mouth. We'll take a look at a few hands over this week in the next couple weeks, talking about some of these concepts. But yeah, Mark, sort of just share a little bit about how you approach this element of the game of poker, and then we can start talking about some of the hands that you thought illustrated your points very well.
So most of these hands, there are spots where, like, especially in tournaments when there's an ante, there's a lot of like raising with marginal hands, and then you don't connect with the flop, and it's really hard to navigate all these spots. And you'll see how, like, in those hands, I target the weaker ranges of how someone constructs their range. And to most recreational players, to my knowledge, they think about, oh, do I have a value bet or do I have a bluff? But real poker is actually a lot messier. Like, it's a lot of bluff raising, a lot of like defending against aggression, like especially when pros, they pick like small sizings, like 1.5 big blinds, or like even a 3-bet pot if they bet the 30%, you're supposed to defend like really uncomfortably wide. And most recreations don't have that in them. So what ends up happening if a recreational player plays against recreational players? Against B30, so 30% on the flop, the defender already folds all the bottom parts that are supposed to be bluffed on the turn and river. So now you actually get to you bet and he calls like we were talking about the queen's hand on that king 7 deuce spot. The defender folded so many hands that are supposed to be turned into a bluff that on the turn he doesn't have them anymore. And now you're bluff catching, but he doesn't have the bluffs. So like that's how the population plays, but how real poker is supposed to be played is you're supposed to like bluff raise him on the flop sometimes. You're supposed to like when he bets the river, jam back on him as a bluff. Like it's just really messy.
Yeah,
And most people don't get that.
and I think most people don't get that. You took the words right out of my mouth. Like a lot of recreational players, and even a lot of like, serious professional players, I think, just don't have this sense of analyzing the range construction and understanding that on future streets, these players just aren't going to have the combos that they need to have in the different buckets, the different branches of the decision tree because they're not playing earlier streets correctly. And like overfolding on an earlier street is a great example of that. So one thing that's always missing, I find, recreational players talk to me and they're like, I see these players out there just like making these bluffs that don't make any sense to me. Like they're not natural bluffs. And I think we all get a sense of like, okay, semi bluffs and like blocker based bluffs and like there's natural bluffs, let's call it, that we can just look at our hand and look at the board and say, okay, these are some good hands to be bluffing with. But you're talking about, up against like a minimum defense frequency or like when you're supposed to finding all these other unnatural combos to put in those ranges. I think that's something a lot of recreational players struggle with.
Yes, I think the bottom, like what it comes down to is like the minimum defense frequency in every line. People are just not finding them. And that's actually how you make money in poker. Not getting ace king and getting it in with queens and winning and feeling like you're the best player in the world. Or like you rivering a full house and the guy ends up having like a flush to call you down. Like I think everyone knows how to play these spots. But then like you know what the population actually like where they think they can get edges as like, oh, maybe I should have folded my flush. That's actually how they think they get the edge. Like, oh, like if I folded the flush, I wouldn't have paid him off. But that's not actually how it is supposed to work. You look at these edges because yes, you could fold the flush. And it's probably like fine because the other guy isn't bluffing, but that's not actually what determines a bigger win rate. Let's say we play tournaments, 1,000 people, and we know that only like 5% of the people win. So you have to be doing something different than 950 people, right? And I'm pretty sure 950 people, when they have a full house and the other party has a flush, they just like pay off, or they don't pay off, but that doesn't distinguish the 5%.
Yes. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's there's something that's counterintuitive about it as well, I think, that just makes it something that we as recreational players, as less studied players, really need to study and internalize some of this stuff to find these missing opportunities. So yeah, so do you want to talk a little bit more about that abstractly, or should we
No,
dive
let's
into it
jump
now?
into the hands.
Okay. So Mark has shared some hands with us here. I'm gonna we'll talk about them as we're describing them, but I'm also gonna put some still images of the runouts in the show notes here. So if you want to know the spot that we're talking about, you can just scroll to the show notes here, and you'll get a chance to see to see all the details for the hands. But yeah, so Mark, so why don't you take us through the first one that you brought here?
All right. That's the 7-5 hand, right?
Yeah, 7-5.
Okay. So how I think about poker is we have 7-5 of diamonds, and the hijack opens off 50. Wait, it should be 70 big blinds, right?
Yeah, you would have had
Yeah,
70 at the start of
70
the
big
hand.
blinds. And we have 7-5 of diamonds. So the first decision point is this a call or fold or three bet? And
And we're in the big blind just for our audience as well. So there's a
yes, we're in the big
late
blind.
position opener. We're in the big blind with 7-5
Yes.
dollars.
So the first decision point I have is do I have a three bet? Do I have a call? Do I have a fold? And I believe everyone agrees that we're gonna call this hand. And here I think is the biggest, is already one decision point that most recreationists do not find is this bluff three bets. Like everyone finds jacks and ace queen as a three bet, but they don't find the bluff three bets. And you're supposed to find some, I would say, unnatural combos for the recreationalists to find them. Like for the pros, it wouldn't be that hard. Um, do you want to take a guess on like maybe one or two combos that fall in?
So I think we're going to be value three betting with kind of the hands like you described, like big
Right.
pairs and ace, big aces and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then there's some sort of like those natural bluffing combos for three bets would be like the wheel aces, like the ace five suited, the ace four suited, some of those. Um, I know people talk about like if you want to have like board coverage, then you're going to have to be
Hmm.
three betting with some like suited one gappers and maybe some like hands that are going to have some middle of the range, middle of the board coverage, things like that.
Yes.
Like King five suited is another good example of one of those like natural bluffs. Those are the ones that jump out to me as sort of
Right.
the textbook ones.
So for 70 big blinds, we do care about playability and we do care about board coverage. So the natural bluffs would be like the board coverage bluffs would be like 10-7, Jack 9, Jack 10, something like this. And those are the hands that recreationists don't want to three bet, and the three bet sizing would be 10 big blinds.
Mhm.
Right? Or like very polarizing because we are trying to say, hey, we have it or we don't have it. So, and I think most recreational players would play like 6 big blinds or like a timid 8 big blinds because they don't want to lose their stack, like post flop. But
Yeah.
that's not how poker, again, is supposed to be played. Real poker is supposed to be really messy, like lots of raising, lots of like counter aggression to defend properly your big blind because you don't want to be the guy that like if I'm sitting at the table, I actually can see that people don't want to raise my big blind. They look at my big blind and they're like, oh, never mind, I'll just pitch this. I'm
Totally,
not
because they
even
know.
gonna try. And you want to be that guy because you get more walks and etc. Anyways,
Mark,
so
one question just before we
yes.
continue. So our audience might be hearing like 10 jack suited, isn't that the kind of hand I want to call with? Are these all hands that are sort of a mix between calling and three betting? Or are you someone who's like,
Okay.
no, these are good ones to
Okay.
three bet with and call with other ones?
So 10-7 suited would be about 70%, I believe, three bet. But like you don't have to be that accurate. You just need some hands that can continue on those medium boards
Hmm.
that counteracts your ace king. Like you don't want to be the guy who just has ace king every time the board is 10-9-5 or
Right.
10-9-7 and you just check bet, you see bet and then check for the turn, or you bet the turn again. That's the uncomfortable spots. Like you blow the pot with a hand that could win at showdown because he's supposed to have some ace jacks that you win or
Hmm.
king queens, but Now you just keep betting and betting, and we know you're betting and you're betting, and on the river you don't have anything, and you're just sitting there and you check, and he bets, and you are sitting there again. You have no idea like what you're supposed to do. And now with having Jack 10 or Jack 9 or 10-7, at least you can fold your ace king with good conscience, right?
Yes, because you have these other hands
Yeah,
in the same range that perform better
yeah,
on boards like this, on runouts like this. And
yeah,
Mark, I really like the way that you're just to hammer this point home. You know, recreational players in particular, we like easy decisions. We like
yeah,
being comfortable. And that is what we need to abandon because, like you're saying, the best poker doesn't involve being comfortable. It involves being uncomfortable and making other people even more uncomfortable. So I expect we're going to find a couple of moments that make our audience feel uncomfortable
yeah.
as we
I
explore this, and
think
that's
it's
what they
also
should.
very uncomfortable to just make it 9 big blinds with 10-7 suited and getting
Yes,
called, right? It's just like, oh, why did I get myself in that spot? And like, we would like, as human beings, we like to be right, like about
yes,
the stuff, or sh certain. But in poker, it's nothing is certain. You don't know the run out. You're supposed to just, again, it's just messy. Anyways, let's jump back into the hand.
yes. 7-5 in seven
Yeah.
five of diamonds in the big blind.
So yeah, I call 7-5 of diamonds, and the flop comes 10 of hearts, 9 of clubs, 7 of clubs. So we have um bottom pair. And then the next decision point, do I have a board that I want to be um leading? And this board is a clear no. So if you have questions, just interrupt me. But I feel like
Okay.
everyone knows we don't bo donk this board.
Yeah, no, we're checking
Um,
here all the
yeah.
time. Yeah.
And my opponent elects to check, which I think it's fine. Like you don't have to bet everything. You can check, have some hands that check. The turn is just 4 of diamonds, and now um there's a shift in ranges that already happened on the flop, because if the in position player had a jacks, he would start firing, betting,
Hmm.
and that's a hand that I can remove safely from his range. Like he of course he has some traps, but like we'll get to that later. So there are some hands that he doesn't have, like King 10 of clubs, like Jack 10, like all these hands he would start betting. So, but so he's somewhat capped, and I'm uncapped because I check my entire range. So if you put it into the solver would say, oh, my range increases and his range like decreases in value. So that gives me the betting lead. And if you think about all my range, like I have 5-6 offsuit, 5-3 offsuit, I have uh Queen 8, just diamonds and spades that don't have like that doesn't interact with the board, like with the suits on the board. I have 8 deuce suited. Right? I have 8-3. Like I have so many like nothing hands that would lose to his checking range, like the ace highs, or if he checks, he could have a 7 or pocket eights. Like he could still have like decent hands to check. But the reason why we defend all these hands, like the 8-3 suited preflop, is you can't defend them preflop and not take stabs, because then you just lose even more money. You have to defend aggressively your big blind and not passively.
And
So
Mark, you're basically saying that like some of the value that we get from calling with these hands pre-flop is in being able to take it away post-flop. If we're not going to bluff effectively post-flop with these hands, then they're not as profitable to us, and
yes,
we probably shouldn't be defending them because we're not going to be able to defend them and still profit from just their bare
right,
strength of their hand as much as we can
exactly.
with better hands. Okay.
Let's say I have 8-3 of diamonds. Like there's no like I can't check and then he goes pot and I just sit with eight high. Like what are we hoping for? Like I check call and like hope to hit my open ender that's not a flush completing card. Like and then I donk. Like it's I mean I see a lot of people they when they make their hand they donk, but
Hmm.
that's the problem to like to a good player. A good player will recognize, oh, you don't have any bluffs because you want to check call eight high and make it straight.
Right.
So now I have to start like bluffing these hands, and because I have so many like gut shots and straight draws and flush draws and eight highs and five highs, I have to start going thinly for value. And like my and I think like every pair is good enough to put in that range because if I'm bluffing five high to eight high to jack high, I can in a vacuum, I'm supposed to bet every pair. So like here's where an imbalance would start occurring if you start betting top pairs, but you start like bluffing the a5 highs to jack highs. Now you're just betting top pair, and that's not enough. So you have to start betting some nine, some second pair, and some third pairs. And my hand is actually pretty good with the five. The five, you think it doesn't play a significant role, but it does because it unblocks the pocket eights, the pocket sixes. Like I understand pocket eights is ahead, but I still need to bet because he could have as well ace three or something. So the five does not interact with the rest of the board, which um it's more likely he connects with the board than if I have seven, eight.
Yeah,
And
it's like the
yeah,
unblocking is just the other side of the coin
yes.
when it comes from blocking. And it's
So
also something we don't naturally think about a lot because it affects sort of other parts of the range that we're not really focused on. But yes, it
yeah,
yeah,
so
I
how I
understand.
think about it is like if let's say I had ace seven, so to most people it would be like the same hand. It's seven, it's the third pair, like but ace seven actually has better properties to bluff catch because you also need to have some hands in the check call line. You cannot bet everything. So now you have some hands in the betting line that are like if the river would be a seven, that you still have some trips, and the 7-5, like you still have some trips on the river.
Hmm.
So you have certain good runouts on every board. And also a7, if you recheck and go check check, and there's an ace on the river, now we can cool a top pair.
Nice.
And that's something that recreational players maybe don't think about too
Hmm.
often. That they just think, oh, they have third pair, but I think I have third pair and I have this blocker, like this second card. So I go for a bet and he calls. So um he can still have so many hands. He can have pocket eights, he can have 7-8, he can have 9-8. Like I think he would start raising if he had pocket fours because the four came. I think he would start raising some hands that would was slow playing. Maybe like pocket tens. Like let's say he has pocket tens with the ten of clubs. Maybe he'll find another like a slow play on the turn again. But what most recreationalist players do, they see, oh, there's a flush draw or there's straight draw. I want to get value now.
Yep.
So now like you don't have that necessarily on the river. And now we are getting to the river, which is in innocent deuce of diamonds. So like such an irrelevant card. And now when you think about my hands, I still have 8-3 of
Yep.
diamonds.
Yep.
So because I'm betting 8-3 for a small bet, I'm just going for some 9x or 7x that go for small. Maybe I with top pair I would go bigger. And I just go for one third. And he decided to raise to like 4x, well, basically almost pot.
Yes.
And um in game I was like questioning because you actually can see the clock running on my in the hand history, like what hands it could be. Like it's just unusual to raise on the river, and I think a lot of recreational players they would already like pitch it because like I just have like third pair or something.
Yeah, let me just take our audience through it here.
Mm.
So the board, the flop is nine of clubs, ten of hearts, seven of clubs. It goes check, check. The turn is the four of diamonds. We lead for two big blinds and get called. And then the river is the two of diamonds. So it's 10, 9, 7, 4, 2. We have middle pair here. And we make a small bet on the river, three big blinds into a pot of 9.7, and get raised to 11 big blinds. I'll tell you, Mark, as you're saying, most of our listeners are just folding right here. Uh, we had middle pair, we bet for value, they raised. And even if we say to ourselves, they're bluff raising here, a certain percentage of the time, I still think hardly any of our listeners are going to decide to pull the trigger on a three bet here.
Um, so he doesn't have to bluff raise. He can value raise too. And that's, I think, that's something that recreationists don't think about. What if he has aces? He
hmm
could value raise that hand.
hmm
Like, but he has to play aces that way. He has to check the flop on the turn. He has to like call the tiny bet, and now he has to value raise. Like maybe he's value raising an ace nine type of hand, which is like very okay. Like I think my hand is obvious. I have a small pair. I don't have top pair, or like I have eight high. Like he can value raise ace nine. Like, and I think recreationist players don't understand like how to read a certain bet. So you should raise ace nine because the other player doesn't show strength, right? So, and a lot of players, even if they are suspicious, they're just going to end up calling
hmm
and lose to the bluff raises, to the value raises, sorry,
hmm
right? Because um,
Because that is
it
kind of like a
is,
general rule that we learn is sort of like if we think our opponent is either value betting or bluffing,
yes,
we should just call so that they don't if we raise into them, they can like play perfectly against us and fold their bluffs and continue with their value. But that's kind of a simplistic approach, I
right.
think.
And I just think in game that he's not balanced in that spot because so I went for the jam, which is let me think, like three times the pot. Like I
hmm
jammed for 55 big blinds in a pot of 20.
hmm
And this goes back to the concept of like pre-flop, well, no, on the flop where he checks back and I'm uncapped. I still have Jack 8, I have 8 6, I have 9 7, 10 7. Like I have all these hands, right? That could go for the same line, and I would. Um, so he would need to have some calls in that line. One very easy call is pocket tens or aces. Not sure if everyone does it,
Mm.
but even then, even those combos are not enough. You would need, if you raise ace nine, you probably need to call sometimes, like to come up with the minimum defense frequency because raise you cannot take a certain action and never defend this line. Okay? Because otherwise you're just if you're folding everything that is not the nuts and you never have the nuts, then you're never calling,
Right.
right?
Yes, good point.
And I think there is a hand later on that we can talk about. It matches very well with this hand. I believe it was the 4-3.
Okay.
Yes.
So so just to kind of sum up this situation for our audience, um, you lead the river, you get raised by your opponent, and you decide to shove. And can you kind of just like sum up what it is about your opponent's range that you feel like, oh, this is a good shove spot? It sounds like you're saying you don't think it's likely that on the flop and turn they were thinking far enough ahead to sort of like construct this river bluffing, this river raising range
Raise
effectively. So
call,
yeah,
right?
the raise call range.
Yeah,
So they're raising your river bet with too many combos of hands that cannot call your shove. And that's
exactly.
how
Or that are not
you
willing to call, right?
yes, good point.
Yeah.
Yes, good point. Good point. So how do you like how do you know? Like what is
So,
it that like what makes you feel confident about that in this spot?
okay.
Because I look at
So,
this spot and I'm not thinking to myself, "Oh, slam dunk jam, baby." You know,
because,
like what am I missing?
so if it goes back to minimum defense frequency, if we do the math, um, like I don't have the sheet with me, but you will find those sheets of minimum defense frequency like
Yes.
online. Like I think the bet was 50 into a pot of 70. So he has to call 50 to win 120. And this would come up with a certain minimum defense frequency. Let's just say he has
Sure.
to
Yeah,
call
whatever
like
the formula is. Yeah.
25% or 20% because it's a big shot, he doesn't have to call much. But if you end up just calling nothing, like I can just jam range. That's what the
Yeah.
solver would do. I think I'll have like that's why like when we come to the 4-3, I think we shouldn't take the second hand I sent you, but the third hand, and it
Okay.
would show a really good. It's also a very quick hand. It would show a really good example of what I mean.
Okay, so let's move on to the hand that had the 4-3 of clubs, and then
Yes.
we'll talk about that, and then I think we'll take a break for this episode, and we'll
Mhm.
do another episode just kind of capping up some of this stuff. So, all right, so here's a 4-3 hand. It's another spot where you're in the big blind.
Right.
There's an open in earlier position this time, and you call from the big blind with 6-4 of spades.
No, 4-3 of clubs.
Oh, sorry, 4-3 of clubs. I'm looking at the
Yes.
wrong
Yeah,
image here.
4-3 of
Yes,
clubs.
yes, that's it. Yeah.
So the board comes King of clubs, Queen of hearts, Four of hearts. Okay. And I check. He goes for a small bet, and I call it. The turn is a six of spade. I check because like the six doesn't interact with my range. So I mean not too much. And he checks. And here's the problem that when you check the turn, you're capping yourself again.
Hmm.
And you're like you don't have two pairs, right? Like people don't check king queen on that board. People don't check
Right.
king six or aces or ace king or yeah, just what are you gonna do with ace ten of hearts? What do you think are you gonna do with ace ten of hearts, Richard, on the
Yeah, I
turn?
mean it's begging for to put some chips in and trying to get some fold
Right. What about
equity.
ace five of hearts?
Yeah, same thing.
What about pocket eights? Very natural check,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So pocket eights, pocket nines, pocket tens, pocket very natural. Like, and they should check. There's nothing wrong with checking. So it goes check, check. And the river is a seven of hearts. So now we both agreed on the turn. We bet all our flush draws.
In our
So
villain's position. Yeah, yeah.
yes.
Yes.
So what flush do we have then? Like
Right.
as villain?
So when we check back, we don't when we check back all the hands that sorry, what if we bet all our flush draws, then when we check, we don't have any flush draws. And so when the flush comes in, we can't
Yeah.
have the
Because
flush.
what are you gonna do with Jack 10 of hearts, Jack 9 of hearts, 10 9 of hearts,
Yeah.
Ace 6
Yeah.
of hearts? You're
Those are a
like
lot of those natural semi
yes.
bluffs that we're
So
going to be
you
playing aggressively. Yeah.
yes. But to remain balanced, you need to have some flushes in your checking range, flush draws in your checking range, right?
Hmm.
Could
Hmm.
maybe could you guess maybe a combo that would check?
On the turn there,
Yeah.
um, it depends. Would it be a hand that had like a lot of equity, like 7-9 of hearts, or sorry, 5-7 of hearts that's got the straight draw and the
So
flush
he's
draw
coming from
going for it?
EP. So
Oh, so he's
that's
not going to have a
where,
lot of those.
yeah.
Right. So a hand like 10 jack of hearts, maybe, that's got the up and down.
No, it just wins by making the other guy fold a better hand by
Right.
betting. So a
So it's
hand would be King Six of Hearts,
okay.
right? It has to contain the King of Hearts
I understand. So
because
you're saying,
you block so much from the top pairs that would check call from the big blind that it's a good hand to check. But what do most people do with King Eight of Hearts?
and let's just remind our audience here. So if you don't have the screen in front of you, the flop is 4 of hearts, queen of hearts, king of clubs, and the turn is the 6 of spades. So if you have the king 6 of hearts, you'd have 2 pair and the flush draw, and you would have bet flop. And we're saying now it would be a good candidate to check on the turn, because you want to have some flush draws in your checking range. And
Again,
this one, yeah,
against a good player, you should do that,
good point.
right?
Good point.
Against a recreational, you should almost never do it, but against someone who's capable, and by capable, I mean you will see it on the river. You should, and you want to remain somewhat balanced. You should, like I wouldn't even hate checking Ace Six of Hearts, like, but it's like a minor detail. But yeah, you're supposed to have some flush draws that check. Okay. So what population does is they see King Eight of Hearts, they're like, oh, that's a great hand. Like I'm gonna bet. Okay, they have King Jack of Hearts, King Six of Hearts, right? You guys are all going to bet.
I think so. Yeah, a lot of those are going to be bets. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Where like I think about it in terms of blockers, like I block top pair, I block flush draws. What do I expect him to call? And
Hmm.
now what happens is in those rare instances when we bet and we get raised, what do you think the guy shows up with if he doesn't have a flush draw? He has a set or 2 pairs or something, right? And now you're running into trouble basically if the flush doesn't get there. And then you feel like, oh, I have 2 pair, I have to call,
Right.
right? Because also if he bets, I would fold my 4-3. I have bottom pair. I would like there's nothing I would do about it. Anyways, so after check check and the river is a 7 of hearts, I go for 5x pot, like B500. That's what we call it. So basically I'm asking him, hey, are you balanced enough to defend this sizing?
I
Right?
like
Like,
that.
are you coming up with the right frequency to defend? And in game, the person showed me the hand, like he open folded, and he shows 2 pair. So now, if you actually start folding 2 pairs, what are you calling? Tell me
What are
your
you?
hand
Yeah. What is?
calling.
No, that's it. I mean, you're running out of good hands if you're folding 2 pairs. It's really just sets
Is
and
he gonna
flushes,
fold?
and
Yeah, is he folding a set there too?
right,
Well,
he's running out of
which
hands.
set would he have
Sixes would be
Mm-hmm.
the only one.
so that he checks the turn?
Yeah, that's true.
That's what
Yeah.
I'm trying to make people understand. They are too focused on value. They don't think about the bottom of the range, but of the bottom of your villain's range.
Yes.
But it's not important against recreationers to think of bottom of villain's range because if a recreationer sits there with 4-3, he just checks, right? Nobody considers bluffing that because like it was passive, maybe I win against ace 10 or like, but usually when I sit in as EP, I check and you have 4-3, you're never gonna win because I have jacks. Like I'll check pocket eights to pocket jacks. I check queen jack, and everything else that needs to make a 4 or 6 fold goes into the betting line in the turn on the turn.
Hmm.
So if I check, you will never win basically with the 4, and that's how poker is being like played because you don't have an option. Like no, if I play against a good regular, I don't have an option. I have to bluff this.
Hmm.
And against a good regular, I would remain more balanced, I would maybe play pot, like trying to wrap King Jack or King 10. But I know a recreational, like he was a weaker player. Um, I know that he could not come up with the minimum defense frequency for that line. And I believe King 7 would need to find a call because otherwise you're just folding too often.
Mhm.
And the
Mhm.
thing about the two pair that he had is he didn't have that on the turn.
Yes,
So that's why he checked on the turn. And now if it was seven of spades and then the six of hearts, that'd be a totally different situation because
right.
now he's betting the turn.
Now he's betting, right? And now he's removing those two pair combos on the
Right,
turn. And now he doesn't have them on the river. And
right.
now river two pair is really good because you're like, but again, it's uncomfortable calling like 500% pot like on the river when the flush gets there because most people don't bluff.
Mhm.
And
And they don't
yeah,
bluff enough. And we do talk about this, with our members from time to time, which is that, even if players bluff occasionally, they're not bluffing often enough to make your calls profitable, if you know what I mean. And vice versa.
yes,
Like we're not calling down light enough. And that means that the bluffs that you're finding are more profitable because
right.
we're overfolding in these spots.
Like the spot we had before when I bet third pair with the seven, he is
Yes.
supposed to call ace king. He has to call
Hmm.
ace king because he beats 8-3.
Hmm.
But because I'm balanced enough, I will put a seven into the betting range so he loses sometimes. I'll make ace king indifferent. That's what we call
Yes.
indifference, right? And
Yeah.
that's how you come up with the defense. But most people think too much of like, do I have value or do I have bluff? And not like in the middle, like I beat some hands, I don't beat some hands.
Hmm.
Or like
Hmm.
for manipulating the opponent's range based on certain bet sizes.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And I think it's like you kind of got at earlier, Mark. It's easy to play in a vacuum, the value hands. It's kind of easy to play the bluff hands, the bad hands, the bad
Right.
hands. Um, but what's hard to do for recreational players in particular is to visualize the entire range and to account for how all the different parts of the range are going to be played profitably, because that illustrates to us, oh, well, we need some of these combos in this branch of the decision tree. We need some of these combos in this, bucket that we're going to be putting this stuff into. But if we're not looking at the entire range overall, it just we get lazy and we're like, okay, well, this makes a good bluff. This makes a good value bet. I'll just check this. And you're not thinking about the entire range composition.
The only
It's
other
Yes,
hard to
thing
I
do.
that
agree.
the only other thing that I um, want to mention is some of the player pools that we play against don't understand that you should have a flush there. And they just got two pair and they're going to call anyway because they got two pair.
Yes, I understand that. And but that's usually on those states where I probably like in a $10, $20 tournament they probably would do, but $150 online is usually considered like mid to high
Right.
stake. And
Yep.
that's actually we are playing for significant money because I remember first place in that tournament was 10,000 and bounties. So
Hmm.
when we play for significant money, I think usually you have more thinking players. And I was aware that he's like a weaker player, but like not a bad player. He understands ranges, but he's not like someone who has $20 in cashes on GG poker,
Right.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, but like you can make those assumptions just by looking at hand and mob and like the average buy-in of a certain player. It gives you a good feel on what level he's thinking. If he's only playing 10Ks and 25Ks, or if
Mhm.
he's playing with a 130 at the local casino.
Yeah, and like Shark Scope for online players, like you can't necessarily tell the skill level, but you can tell sort of the experience level,
Right, yeah.
which helps kind of narrow it down a little bit there. Yeah.
Yep.
Um, So we're gonna talk about at least one other hand in next week's episode. But is there anything else, Mark, that you want to reference here as part of this conversation?
Nope.
All right. Well, folks, thanks for joining us. I want to thank Mark Zhang for bringing this really interesting subject matter into the conversation, and for Rob Washam for being in the booth with me here. Of course, the Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino. We couldn't do what we do without them, and all our premium members and all our free community members. Thank you all so much. We'll see you next week on the Rec Poker Podcast. All right, have a good night, everybody.